Hello and welcome back, Freedom Warriors, for another episode of Essential Talks, where you stay for the conversation and you leave empowered. Today we have Kristina from, what is it, VatraWellness.
Yeah.
So give us a little bit of a backstory about yourself, Kristina, where you're located, what you do, what your facility does, like all of the options you might have, and your connection to We Are All Essential, because I know you are a member, and so we'd like to get a little background. And before we do that, I'm your host, Jamie Russo, and my two lovely hosts, Kimberly and Jessica. So now back to you, Kristina.
Oh, thank you, Jamie. So my name is Kristina of VatraWellness, and the name actually came as a way that I wanted to honor my Serbian heritage. That was a big part of it. And then also because, not everybody's into it. Some people think it's a little woo-woo, but I'm a Sagittarius, which is a fire sign, and I wanted to honor that part of myself as well. So, and I'm known to be a little bit of a firecracker sometimes. So I'm pretty loud. So that's where the name came from. A little bit about me is I am a yoga practitioner. I'm a Reiki practitioner, a meditation guide. I do a lot with Mohawk College, which actually started at the beginning of the first lockdown. They started hiring me as I'm a graduate from there. I have a marketing degree. And so they started hiring me, of all things, not anything related to my program at Mohawk College. They started hiring me for meditation sessions for during their wellness weeks, which is pretty cool. So that's kind of where that segued from. And yeah, I'm a social media marketer, which is separate from my my yoga, Reiki, and meditation business. I am a community builder, so I host clothing swaps. So instead of throwing away your clothes or donating them, I have meetups where people will come with whatever they Marie Kondoed from their closet. Everybody gets together, they do the trade-offs, and everybody leaves happy. I also host nature cleanups. And yeah, my biggest thing is building and creating a community within the Hamilton area. So yeah, that's now that I've talked your ear off.
Nice.
That's super cool.
Thank
I
you.
love it. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Thanks, guys. I'm also planning some yoga workshops, some local yoga workshops, like within like a couple hours of Hamilton, just so that, because I know a lot of people aren't able to travel right now. And I just think that that's a lot of people need the break, right? So, yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How did you get into We're All Essential and like finding another organization?
So I started following We Are All Essential pretty much like at the beginning of all of this. I think I found We Are All Essential on Instagram, and then very quickly ended up in the Telegram group and just trying to be as active within the community as I could. I hosted a yoga in the park session with We Are All Essential. I don't know if it was last year or the year before. I think it was last year. And yeah, I love the community. I love the awareness. I love, just like I said, I'm big on community, and I love that you are all bringing awareness, bringing to light everything that's been happening and creating a community simultaneously with that.
Now, Vatra, that to me, or that I know of, means fire or passion. Is that what it means to you?
Yeah.
And also, just explain do you have a studio? How did you first open up? What was your vision in opening that when you first got started?
Yeah, so it actually directly translates to fire or light. And a big part of the name is, like I said, I'm a fire sign, but I also love the light aspect of it. I know I didn't really touch on that, but you have 1,000 thoughts going on in your head and you're just trying to get them all out. But I love, like, for me, I just developed my logo and I launched my website, and in my logo, it's a sun with a moon and a star. And I love, like, the natural elements of light that also represent fire, right? So that's a big part of that. And just yoga and, bringing love and light to the community. It's also, there's a big picture to all of that. And then I don't actually have a brick and mortar studio. I've been teaching. We'll get into more of that as we chat, but I was teaching at 3 studios before the first lockdown. I'm not teaching at any of those 3 studios anymore. And I have found an inclusive studio that I really love that I teach at every Tuesday. And then outside of that, I've been mostly just doing one-on-one yoga sessions with my clients privately, a lot of which I've actually found through being inclusive and not discriminating against somebody for making a choice or not making a choice, which has been really interesting because it's, ironically enough, part of the reason that I'm not teaching at a couple of yoga studios. But yeah, outside of that, in the summertime, I teach a lot at the parks. There is a new yoga studio that will be opening in June, and they want me on the schedule a few times a week. But my brand, like of VatraWellness, it all came to fruition basically in the first lockdown because I was like, well, I guess I'm on my own now. So
That's pretty
yeah.
Awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I birthed a business baby.
Through hardship too. So, and how was your navigation throughout everything? Did you find a rough time during the lockdowns? Many of us did. Some of us were flooded with clients, other ones not so much. So, how was your experience?
So initially, I was teaching at the 3 studios. I was actually supposed to start teaching at a 4th studio. My schedule was already full time, but I love to fill my plate with too much food. So I was supposed to start teaching acro yoga at another studio in Hamilton, but it's very hands-on. So even when things reopened, I still wasn't able to go into that studio and start teaching that. I joined that fit rally. So yeah, it's kind of been, sorry, my dog wants up. It was definitely difficult to navigate, especially in the beginning. I mean, we thought it was only supposed to last 2 weeks. So a couple of the yoga studios were able to pivot to online, which it's great. It's a nice alternative, but that's what it is it's an alternative, right? You don't get the same experience, the same community. You don't have an instructor making adjustments on you. It's just a very different experience altogether. I experienced a pay cut as a result of that. And then because it wasn't the full schedule anymore, it was reduced hours and classes as well. So that was really big. And then after the first lockdown, when we finally reopened, I think we stayed online. I think like that was a really traumatic time. So a lot of it is honestly blacked out from my mind. But I do remember in the fall of 2020, I believe it was July 2020 was when we reopened and we were like, okay, we're going to do in-person classes. And all of the other instructors were too afraid to come back to the studio. They were afraid. So I was teaching sometimes 5 hot yoga classes a day, which works out to be 10-hour days because you have to be there for a half hour before class, a half hour after class to sign people in, sign people out, and to clean the room because now we have this major protocol of, okay, everything has to be crazy disinfected on a whole other level. And yeah, it was really difficult. I actually blacked out in one of the classes I was teaching because it was just way too much. And they wanted us to be wearing masks and they wanted me to police people to wear masks. And then I was like, I don't get paid enough to do this, first of all. And I'm also not the parent of these grown adults. Like I shouldn't have to tell somebody to put something on their face or take something off of their face. If you feel more comfortable, put it on. If you don't. At the end of the day, you're coming to my classes. My classes are all waitlisted. So if you don't like it, you don't have to be here. You'll give somebody else a spot on their mat. And that was kind of like where my head was at because all of the classes at that point were being live streamed anyway. So you're going to get the same class. You're just not going to be in the hot yoga studio. If you don't feel safe, stay home. Like, I'm sorry. And that was one of the big differences for me. Actually, two of the studios, because they were the same owners, they at the end of the day, they gave us an ultimatum. They sent us an email in the lockdown that came after that. So I think that was the third lockdown. And they basically said, you're not allowed to teach anywhere else. And I emailed back and I was like, I'm an independent contractor. First of all, I can teach wherever the hell I want. Can I say it? Sorry, can I swear?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. I'm like, I can teach wherever the hell I want. Like, I'm not poaching your clients. I'm getting my clients from somewhere totally different. And that's none of your business. Like, it's also none of your business. I'm not taking any of your clients. I'm doing my own thing. And it was a group email. So it was sent to all of the instructors. I said, I'm not, I'm going to continue to do what I'm doing. And I was met with a services no longer rendered email after I was teaching 5 classes a day, 10-hour days at the yoga studio, because nobody else wanted to do it. And it was just like a big punch in the face. And it's like, and I found out that 2 weeks later, they asked the instructors to teach for free. So not only are we in a lockdown and we have reduced hours and we've already accepted a reduced rate, but now you've lost 2 full-time teachers, because there was another teacher who said the same thing as me and was like, hell no. But now they're asking you to teach for free.
Wow, the audacity. Like,
The
I just can't
audacity.
even, like, okay, charity, like, no, this is a job, and like, you pay. Like,
Yeah, for the first year, I was super empathetic towards them, and I was like, you know what? Like, I want a studio to come back to, so I'll take the reduced pay, and I'll just do whatever I can. I started a little secondhand thrift store on the side where I was literally hustling Facebook Marketplace and Kijiji, and I had an Instagram page where I was like, fixing things up, refurbishing, and reselling things, and I was doing decent with that, and it was fun. It was a hobby. I had the time, so I was doing that, and that was fine. But I was like, okay, enough is enough. You've been taking donations from your students. You're still collecting the same memberships from your students. They're not on hold. You can still pay us. We have a reduced schedule as it is. There's no reason that you can't pay us. One of you just got your boobs done, and the other one just bought animals and fenced in a whole farm. So like, you're not having a hard time financially. The most you can do, like the decent thing to do, is to pay your instructors.
Yeah.
wow, that's so crazy.
Yeah.
Did you, wow, just absorbing that. So in terms of how you were with like your stance towards things and everything, did you find that you got a lot of pushback from your clients, or were they really on board with being like, be here if you want to be here, or like, what kind of pushback did you get?
It was a combination. Like, I was pretty outspoken about all of this pretty early on. So I got labeled a tinfoil hat or whatever from the very beginning, a conspiracy theorist, whatever you want to call it. From the very beginning, I would say like about a month and a half into it, I was like, okay, this is crazy. Like, none of this makes any sense. So, but it was a combination. Like, I had some people that were super supportive, and they were like, yeah, I don't really know if you're right or wrong about this, but I want to do yoga. So like, let's do it. And then there were people that were like, yeah, like, I think that this is crazy too. And then there were people that were like, you're crazy. Like I had one student come into my class. He was a chiropractor, and there was a guy, and it's a hot yoga studio, right? So there was one guy, and this is after they had already spaced out all of the mats, and you have to be, I think it was like 12 feet apart at the time or something like that. This is, we've gone through so many transitions here, but yeah, I think it was when it was 12 feet apart or 12 meters or whatever the hell it was. I don't know what it was, but it was something. Everybody was far apart nonetheless. And we have or they have, I'm not part of it anymore, but they have a air intake. I can't remember what the name of it is called, but it's essentially a vent that's up high on the ceiling. Hot air rises, so the air is constantly circulating and replenishing, and it's probably the most optimal state. Like, assuming that everything was as deadly as they said it was, this would be the most optimal source of exercise, because the air is constantly replenishing and hot air rises, so it's instantly getting shot right up, right? So you would think that people would feel the most safe in that room. Well, there was a guy in the top left corner, and he has asthma, so he already has a hard time breathing, and he's always been like one of those people where he's practicing, he's like got a little bit of a gasp, almost like a little bit of a cough, like he's trying to catch his breath. He's always been like that, like for years. I remember seeing him practice, and it was always the same thing. Well, there was this chiropractor, and he's in the class, and they're like halfway across this practice room from each other. And the chiropractor stops mid-practice, makes it abundantly clear that everybody can see that he's putting a mask on his face, because this is before there were any mandates. And afterwards, he told me that he wanted me to send an email to the owners to complain. So I sent them the email, and I was like, you know what? Like, I have integrity. You are asking me to do this, so I'm going to send the email. This is on your behalf. They know what my thoughts are on all of this. And sent off the email. Got no response from them. Whatever. I'm like, all right. A week later, I come into the studio, and this is after, like, I've been teaching all week, right? A week later, I get pulled aside by the owners, and they're having a word with me because he sent an additional email after he asked me to send an email. And he wanted to complain about how he felt unsafe in my class. There was a guy coughing. He made it sound like he was hacking. Even if he's in the complete other side of the room, and we have the air vent that's going up. Turned it into a whole thing. I just said, listen, like, don't come to my classes then. Like, if you don't feel safe, don't come to my class. And then they actually implemented a mask mandate at the studio before the city did. So they decided, so the yoga instructor scientists, they decided that we were going to have a mask mandate in the studio, not only just to walk into the studio, but while you're practicing in the hot room, which is 104 degrees Fahrenheit with a 30% humidity rate, you're going to practice with a mask on. And then they were like trying to push it on to me. And I'm like, I have to talk for an hour. Now I can't even walk around the classroom. I have to stay on my mat in the one place. So I'm talking for an hour while I'm doing the practice in a hot yoga studio. Like, I'm like, do you not realize how crazy this is?
Yeah, no doubt.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah.
It's exactly what you said. Like, if you're not, if you don't feel safe, then stay home. And trying to subject everyone around you to your idea of what makes you safe and feel safe on the inside, like, my God.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, there was a little bit of both. I would say that in the last 2 years, I have attracted an immense amount of really great, like-minded people. And I would say that people are waking up to it still. I mean, it's totally separate, but I did participate in a convoy just on Saturday in Niagara Falls, and most of the responses were amazing. Like, lots of people honking, lots of people like the elderly ladies were so cute. They were like out on their front porch in their pajamas, like so happy, ecstatic, right? Because they're like, they need that, right? Because it makes them feel like they're not they might have family at home that's like, you need to wear a mask, like, you shouldn't be doing this. You see that a lot, right? Like, the younger family members who are trying to force what they think is right onto the elder. It's like, that person is like 80 years old. You don't think that they've lived a long ass life and they can't make decisions for themselves? How ignorant are you? Like, how ignorant are you to think that because they're older that they're not able to make a decision for their own body?
Yeah, right.
Yes.
Right? Like, it's craziness to me.
It's the tiny tyrants, right? It's the idea that, like, you're given like an inch and you're going to take a mile in terms of what you feel like you can now put within your control and feel justified in doing so. So these people beforehand, you know, they tried to control what they could in their life, but now this gave them an excuse to say, well, you over there, you are not following what is the insanity, basically, and therefore I can control you. I'm allowed to do this and put you in your place. And so, and then not to go on a rant, but just like the level of wanting acceptance from the other end of that, of people when the masks are coming off and saying, well, if I choose to wear one, you need to honor that. And it's just like, where that, you know, right. Cause that was definitely a two-way street.
It's a superiority complex, right? And I feel like most of the people who have this complex are people who have felt like they've never had control of anything in their life.
Yep.
Yeah.
I completely agree. I completely agree.
Mhm.
If I'm pretty sure that, so I believe that I had met you at a protest in Hamilton, and there was only
Yep.
like 10 of us. Okay, yes, I knew it. I was
Yeah.
just like, all right, because I it was a while back and my memory is terrible.
Yeah.
And so because I'm like, how did I, because I started following you back then, and since then I love your posts, and I love especially the ones that are like are pro freedom. There was one in particular where it was like your face going through space, like, and like I just it was such a fun, it's fun, and I was like, oh, these are amazing. And
I'm
so
really
yeah,
passive aggressive.
yeah, yes, and it's great. You're like smiling. You're like, and we don't have to do this, and we don't have to do this. So
Yeah.
what you gonna do? And, like,
Yeah.
it's great. I love it. And did you find in terms of social media that since posting more freedom type posts, like, did you really just have your Instagram for your business when it started, and that was during the pandemic, or did you have it beforehand and then had since been making more and more posts that were a little bit more challenging to the regime and so on?
So my Instagram has gone through like so many transformations. It's been insane. I was a professional model for 8 years, and that was like what my Instagram was. I've done a complete overhaul of my Instagram because I find that when people like see you as a model, they put you in a category, they put you in a box, and they think that you don't know anything about anything. And then when I went to school, I studied business marketing, and I actually graduated. I was supposed to be done in the fall of 2019, and then basically a bunch of things happened. I wasn't able to, so I ended up finishing in the spring of 2020. And so I had already kind of started doing my rebrand because I was already a yoga instructor. But I didn't have like my VatraWellness. It was just like under my name, like that's what I was doing. And yeah, so I did like the whole rebrand thing segued into my yoga, and slowly started pushing away and away and away from like the modeling, which actually was a pretty seamless transition. And then Instagram did a bunch of updates, so that also helped me, like when they started pushing out the reels and stuff, because when I was doing my modeling, they didn't have the reels. I think it was just IGTV and static posts. And yeah, so that was a pretty easy transition. And then I started posting about just like everything that's been happening. I'm gonna say like 2 to 3, like 2-ish months into like after the start of the first lockdown, like after everything kind of started coming out. And I was actually in a relationship, and I was managing my boyfriend's Instagram because he's a commercial real estate agent. And so I was managing his, and like I was posting about it also on mine, and he was like, you got to stop posting about these crazy ideas that you're having. Like, people are going to label you as a conspiracy theorist, and it's going to screw with my work. So I said, okay, I just won't post about your work on my social media anymore, because like I'm not going to stop posting about something that's authentic to me. Like, this is me. You take it or leave it. If you don't like it, there's the door. See your way out. I don't care. Like, I'm going to attract the right people into my life. If you're not one of the right people in my life, then bye. Like, it was nice knowing you, like I don't know what else there is to say. Like, you either come with me, or you find a different way, and that's fine. I accept that everybody has their own journey, everybody has their own path. Maybe we're not meant to keep walking on the same path together. That's totally fine. And I would say that once I kind of got over the hurdle, like when I first started posting about it, I was like posting about it a lot. Like, I'm sure it was really overwhelming for somebody who was initially following my page to see like a model. And then they kind of like stayed because they were like, okay, the yoga kind of benefits my life. Like, she's sharing these cool things that benefit me. And then they're like, whoa, she really went woo woo. Like, like, she went off the rails. And so I did have a lot of people stick around. But I would say a lot of my followers became inactive on my account. Like they were still stalking it, but they weren't necessarily engaging with my stuff. And I would say now I'm at a point where whenever I post about that stuff, it gets actually the most engagement on my account. So it's interesting because I'm not like, my account isn't necessarily an activist account. I would say, yeah, like I'm a truth seeker and I share what I perceive to be the truth, but it's still a yoga, like wellness, like full encompassing of what wellness means. And I think a big part of that is like obviously your health and obviously listening to your body and trusting yourself. And I finally come back to that. And, you know, I think I've kind of I've gotten it down to a bit of a niche in the sense of wellness, if that makes sense, because before it was like I was sharing all the stuff, all the things, a lot more. I was sharing a lot more like political stuff. And now I'm trying not to do that so much, but it's hard, right? Because you see these things happening in front of your eyes and you're like, more people need to see this. And I have like, you know, 20,000 plus followers on my account. And I'm like, you all need to see this, so you're welcome, you know? So I'll like share these things and it's like unsolicited advice. Yeah.
I love it. I love it. One of your posts that I just it hit me to the core was your silence is violence post.
Yeah.
Kind of, and I think it's something to, let's talk about it because it's so profound in what's going on right now. Not only the contradictions of the government and what's going on, but seeing people actually follow it, unknowing to the truth and what's really going on. And I love what you said about the ethical vegans and the extreme feminists. So can you kind of touch on that and where that post kind of transpired from?
Yeah. So I'm not vegan anymore, but I was vegan. And there was, before I went vegan, there was a really heavy, almost like I don't want to say peer pressure, but like, yeah, there was a sense of peer pressure, right? Like my brother's vegan and we would be at the dinner table. And before I did my transition, you know, he would make comments like, oh, like dead, like carcass or like things like that, like just unnecessary comments, right? And like up on his high horse about this one thing that he's super passionate about. And you see a lot of, you know, like, there's different kinds of vegans. So there's vegans who are, you know, who consume that diet, who eat this way for the animals. Like they it's for ethical reasons, right? And they don't like that, for example, and sorry, this might upset a couple people. So I'm just going to put out a trigger warning. But like cows, for example, like a cow doesn't naturally produce milk. Like that doesn't just happen. A cow has to carry a baby for 9 months. And what the vegans would say is it's rape, right? So the vegans would say because you're artificially inseminating this cow and you're taking its milk, that it's rape. Well, what is it when somebody is about to lose their job and they are being medically coerced? I'm sorry, but it's something happening against their will. You're given an ultimatum. Like that is, in my opinion, the same thing as rape. Like something is being done to your body against your will, whether you like it or not, because you're going to lose your job. And that's just the way that it is. And that's a really sad truth. It's really sad that we've come here. Like, you know, I know nurses, for example, when they get the job, they sign a contract that they're going to get their vaccinations, whatever. They don't sign up to get these experimental vaccinations that nobody knows nothing about. And that's just an example, right? Like, I don't know what kind of jobs we're mandating. Like the police, you know, like a police needs to get a COVID vaccine for what? If you're sick, stay home. You're all grown adults. If you get the sniffles, stay home. You know, like basic, like teachers,
Yes.
you know, and then there's the comparison of like, oh, we all have like our vaccination cards or whatever it is people were saying. And it's like, okay, first of all, they're immunization charts. They go in a desk and they stay there to get lost forever. Like nobody ever looks at them. Nobody cares about them. And it's things that happen when you're a baby, not when you're a grown adult. Like you don't need to update that when you get a flu shot. And I've never had a flu shot before. You know what I mean? Like if I've never had a flu shot and I'm doing just fine, like why do I need to do something just because everybody else is doing it? It's a form of peer pressure, right? And then you have the feminists that are like, my body, my choice. Well, all of a sudden now it's a major contradiction of, okay, it's not your choice anymore. You have to do this for the greater good, you know? Well, okay, let's talk about abortion laws. You know, let's talk about abortion laws in the US. My body, my choice. Well, how do you feel about aborting a baby? How do you feel about being forced to go on birth control? Like, I was forced to go on birth control, you know, like, and I had to, that's a whole other story. That's a big part of why I don't trust like my doctor and the big pharma, like the healthcare system. But yeah, I just think that it's all very hypocritical. And like, even with, you know, like everybody was super vocal about Black Lives Matter, which is run by a bunch of white global elites. None of the money went to support any Black people, and you're gonna sit there and tell me that my silence is violence because I didn't post a black fucking square? Like, are you kidding me? That's a joke, right? Like, because I didn't post a black square. If I was posting a black square with my 20,000 followers, that's going to take away from Black voices. Like, this is a big joke, right? If you really want to do like a blackout, whatever thing that it was, if you really want people to be silent so that Black voices can be heard, then just everybody shut the fuck up. Like, let these people speak. You don't need to announce that you like, and it's, again, it goes back to like that superiority complex of like, I need to be seen. Like, I need people to know that I'm doing this. Okay, like I feed homeless people, right? When I go out, I give stuff to homeless people. Do I post about it on my social media to let everybody know that I'm doing it? No, because you just do that because you're a good person. You know, like I don't need to post a black square. My silence is not violence. I'm listening. There's a difference between being quiet and listening.
Yes. I also
You
said that
know?
there's a difference between doing something out of the goodness of your heart and doing it for the approval or virtue signaling towards others.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yeah, if
And
you
it's the
need other
same
people
thing
to
with the
see,
mask. Yeah.
yep, yep, totally,
100%. And that's
totally.
why I made that post. The silence is violence. Cause like, and this was, I don't know if it was before or after I went to Ottawa, but I didn't go to Ottawa when it was like everything was all hunky dory and it was the big party and everybody was having a grand time. I was in Ottawa the week that there was like police brutality. Like, I was in Ottawa for a few days when it was like police were stomping on people, and like I saw people get beat with batons. I saw people get gassed. I saw people get shot with rubber bullets. I saw snipers on the buildings. Like, you know, and I had police charge at me, like, and I have video of it. It's all on my Instagram, and that's just heartbreaking. And I remember the one guy, I'll never forget it. He was an officer. He was a UN officer. And he was standing there and he had this smug look on his face. And I've never wanted to hit somebody so bad in my life. And obviously I couldn't, but it was, and I wouldn't either. Like, I would never actually do that. But you know, when somebody's deliberately trying to get under your skin, they want to get a reaction from you. And there were guys who were like starting to have a reaction because this guy, he was smiling and he had this baton in his hand, and this guy was just ready to beat the shit out of people. Like, that's what he was there for. That's what he wanted. And you could see it on his face that he just was fucking evil. Like, this guy was evil. You could see it in his eyes. Like, his eyes were dead. And I was just like, I'm glad that I'm here, but at the same time, it's like, this is heartbreaking, like, to see this happening. Like, there were two guys. One guy had a complete meltdown. He had just been gassed. This guy is like tormenting him. And I just grabbed the guy and I gave him a hug and I was like, just breathe with me. Just breathe with me. And I like was hugging him and holding him, and he was like, thank you. Like, you saved me. And I'm like, what is happening here? Like, this was so peaceful, you know, like everybody saw the posts of how nice it was, how peaceful it was. And now we've come to this where they're barricading the red zone. They were like barricading us in. And there were police checkpoints at every entrance, like literal checkpoints. Like, you had to show your identification to say that you live in this area, because if you don't have your identification to walk your dog, to get into this area, to say that you live there, guess what? You're not going in there.
Yeah, I've heard that even after the protest was broken up, that people that were living in Ottawa were like, it's worse now. Like, it's worse now than it was when there were people there. Like, it's just, this is ridiculous. I shouldn't have to have my ID. Like, I was accosted, basically, just trying to walk my dog. And so,
Yeah, and when I say checkpoints, like there was one point where I was like, hey, screw this. I'm not driving anymore. I'm just going to take a Lyft. So I got on a Lyft, and it took an hour and 15 minutes to get to a 15-minute drive away because we had to do all these detours from the police checkpoints. And we actually went through a police checkpoint, and I'm just like, this is crazy. Like, this is not. I grew up going to Ottawa every summer as a kid. My aunt actually lived in Canada. So we would go to Parliament Hill every summer. I spent my summers there. And it was so fun. Like, I had these beautiful, fond memories of exploring and looking at the statues. And I actually dated Corporal Nathan Cirillo, who passed away in Ottawa years ago, who was shot at the Unknown Soldier. That's my ex-boyfriend. So I wanted to go there, and I wanted to pay my respects, and I wanted to do all these things, and I wasn't able to do any of them. And I'm just like, and then I was at the Holocaust Memorial on my last day of being in Ottawa. And there was an Australian man who approached me, and he was like, are you live? And at the time, yeah, it was live on Instagram. And he said, okay, get this. So I don't know like all of the history of like Hitler and that war and everything. I'm not going to pretend that I know. I have an idea of what happened. But even like, I believe history books lie to some degree. And we're seeing that even now, right? Like, they're going to say that this vaccination is what wiped out COVID because that's what they said about polio. That's a whole other thing. But anyways, I'm at the Holocaust Memorial, and he wanted to go pay his respects to the actual memorial itself. We were across the street in front of like the museum, and he crossed the street, and there were police barricading it, and they said, no, you can't go there. And he said, why not? He's like, I'm Australian. Like, we helped with the war. I want to pay my respects. And they were like, no, you're wearing inappropriate, I think they said badges. He had a Canadian flag badge on his hat. And then he had a Canadian flag and an Australian flag across his back. And he said and I think one was actually We Are All Essential. And they were like, no, you have inappropriate badges and flags. And he he kind of educated them on like why he wanted to pay his respects. And they were like, absolutely not, get across the street. Like, I can't pay respects to where my ex-boyfriend died because he was shot down. And he can't pay his respects at the Holocaust Memorial. Like, how sick are you? Like, you guys are sick fucks. I'm sorry. Like, that is beyond me. That is absolutely disgusting. And you can say, people marked things or people did this or that. Whether it happened or not is completely irrelevant. Look at you have to compare like the good from the bad, right? Okay, you might have one or two people who are shit disturbers, right? That's a pretty good ratio considering there was hundreds of thousands of people, right?
Yes.
Like,
it was a completely disproportionate response.
Yeah.
Like, given what was actually being done there and what was happening to what they did, completely disproportionate. And I mean, what I'm really happy is that when Trudeau went to that EU meeting, that they called him out, that they completely called him out for that. Mm-hmm. I mean, nothing made me. It was like validate. It was extremely validating.
Yeah,
because
100%.
You can see him just ruling with impunity, just tossing out these emergency powers kind of things. And even before it was even to be actually debated as to whether it's in use, the thing was put on hold so that they could use it. And it's just like, that's just can't do that. Like, that's ridiculous. Yeah. And so
he has no respect.
Yeah, and so it was just really nice seeing that just from an international community kind of standpoint, that it was seen as what it actually was, which a tyrannical overreach of government powers, and him personally, him just having like a little hissy fit, and that the what do you call that, the something minority, the
small fringe minority.
The fringe minority, the fringe minority, all of a sudden you're invoking emergency powers. Like, you coward, you absolute coward. And so, I completely agree. Completely disproportionate.
Yeah, and not even just like what you're saying with what happened in the UN and like his complete disregard for reality, now it's like he's gone behind, behind closed doors, and now he has a majority government with the NDP. And I don't know what's scarier, the fact that he has a majority government or the fact that it's with the NDP, and how do NDP and liberal voters feel? Like, I hope that you feel disrespected, because that's exactly what's happened, like somebody with different beliefs as you that you did not elect is now, and that's assuming that the election isn't fraudulent, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. The United States showed us just how fair elections are.
Yeah.
So, and it's mind-boggling to see the amount of people out there that are still convinced that everything that is happening is still going on. They look at us like tinfoil hats. Yet we're watching people get beat down in Ottawa by our own police. And we have the European Union calling out our prime minister as a dictator. And these people still can't see it. They're still blind to it. And they're still like, you guys are conspiracy theorists, right?
They don't want to see it. They don't want to see it because they're just too afraid of what it would actually mean.
And it's because it's not on mainstream media too, right? And that's what they heavily rely on for their information. If it's not where they go for their information, then it's not the truth as far as they're concerned, right?
I feel like, even if mainstream media was saying it, they would still, a part of them would deny that it was happening. They'd be like, oh, well, media, I mean, like they lie all the time. Like they would do that because it's just like the safety to their own mental well-being. Like there's only a certain point that they could go before they'll just like crack, and they don't know whether or not they'll be able to recover from that. They would, because everyone does. Everyone who has that disillusionment awakening. But it's like that fear of what would happen if this all were to fall apart, because once you start pulling at one string, it unravels the whole freaking carpet. And so they just have to keep those strings attached regardless of what it takes to do so. And so it's just like watching somebody just like constantly like holding their rug together, being like, I swear to God, I can't have one string go. And it's pathetic. Honestly, I feel bad. I'm just like, well, you know what? One day you'll have an awakening. I don't know what it's going to take, but one day you're going to be like, holy crap, this is wrong. And then from there, so everyone has the time in which they're going to have that happen. It's just a shame that with it being so much in their face, like the release of the Pfizer documents, like if that didn't like wake something up within you, like don't you feel hoodwinked? Like my husband, like he'll go to people, he's like, don't you feel like, aren't you mad? Like, aren't you mad that you got this shot and there's like 1,200 side effects and you were told it was totally safe? Like my doctor told me it was completely safe. And I'm looking at her, I'm like, how can you even say that? You don't even know that. No one knows that. How could you know that? And so it's just, so I don't know.
Yeah, well, even my mom, right? Like there was a lot of pressure on me to get it. And I'm like, absolutely not. It's not happening. And I have always like, my biggest fear, knock on wood, has always been that I wouldn't be able to have children. That's like literally ever since I was a kid, I've had this weird thought in my head that something's going to happen that I won't be able to have children. And I said, and so I had my experiences with my doctors of, like I didn't have acne as a kid or anything like that, but my mom thought that the right thing to do, she's a teenager, she might start becoming sexually active. We put her on birth control. That was like what every mom of my mom's generation did. That's just like what they did. That's what they thought that you were supposed to do. They think that it's a healthy alternative, right? And it's not her fault for thinking that. Like there were people who they respect, that who they consider to be professionals in their field, recommending these things, right? So you don't know better than a doctor, right? So she just texted me. You don't know better than a doctor. So I was put on birth control when I was like 14 or 15. And then I wanted to come off of it by the time I was like 20. And I'm like, this is not working for me. I don't need it. I want my body to function optimally and I want to be healthy. And she keeps texting me.
She knew, she could sense it.
Her ears
her
are
spidey
burning.
senses were tingling. So I'm like, I want my body to function as optimally as I can. Well, then I stopped taking it and I started breaking out with cystic acne to the point where it was so painful that I couldn't sleep on my face. Like it was it was terrible pain, and they were like mountains on my face. I had never experienced that before. And so then I went to the doctor, and I was like, this is what's happening to me. They're like, okay, we're going to give you these topical creams. We need to put you back on birth control, but a different formula. This happened to you too?
It's the
Yeah.
exact same thing. I'm just like,
Yeah.
oh my God, story of my freaking
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. And this is two out of, two of us out of four of us on this video. And so they put me on the birth control. They put me on different formulas. Then it did nothing but screw up my cycle. And then they were like, we're going to put you through the dermatologist. The dermatologist was like, you need to go on Accutane. And I didn't know what that was, but at the time I was a full-time model, and I was like, just fucking fix my skin. That's all I wanted more than anything. I'm like, fix my face. Like I can't make the money that I was making before with this face. And I'm like, just fix me. And so I had to sign a contract that says I was going to stay on birth control, because if I don't stay on birth control, the baby will have birth defects. And then I'd also said that if I commit suicide as a result of being on this, because that is a heavy side effect or like repercussion of being on Accutane, it sends you into a severe anxiety, then they are not liable. So I had to sign away basically my life to these people who are so-called professionals, right? So I'm like, okay, well, like I trust you. So I did that. I did it for, I think, 9 days, and they wanted me to be on it for 6 months. And I was like, I'm done. My whole body dried out to the point where it hurt to wipe when I went to the bathroom. Like I would, so this is my hand. I would like do this slight bend and my knuckles would start bleeding. My lips were so cracked that like they would bleed from me talking, and it was the worst pain ever. So I was like, I'm done with this. They had to monitor my liver and like my blood levels for I think like 3 to 6 months to make sure that everything was fully functioning properly. And I said, screw this. I want my body to function properly, like how it's supposed to be. Like, this is when I started exploring that they were masking symptoms, right? Like symptoms of an underlying condition. They're putting a Band-Aid on top of it and saying, okay, we're just going to cover it up. Like, we're not going to heal you. No, we're not going to fix you. We're actually going to do more damage while covering it up. And so then I went back to my doctor and I said, I'm done with this shit. Like, I'm not doing it. I want to do this the natural way. And she was like, well, Kristina, I'm sorry. This is my toolbox. Like, maybe you do a food journal. And I had never heard what a food journal was before. And I was like, what the hell is a food journal? She's like, it's exactly what it sounds. You just like write down your food, and you write down when you have a breakout, and maybe you'll notice a trend of like what you're eating. And I was like, why didn't you tell me about this before?
Yeah.
Like, right. Why was this never mentioned to me before? Because I totally would have tried this before, ruining my liver. Essentially, that's what I did. Like, and so I did the food journal, and I learned that like I'm sensitive to dairy, and I break out when I eat greasy foods, and like when I have sugars. My dog's chasing his tail. Come here, I'll give you a treat. Come here. So so I was able to pick up on these things. So then that's when I kind of segued into being vegan, and it gave my body the opportunity to cleanse, because I was a healthy vegan. This was before like Beyond Meat and all that crap. Yeah. So I did that. That was my thing. And then I met my nutritionist, who is absolutely amazing. Her name's Lana. If you're in Burlington and you need a nutritionist, 10 out of 10 recommend. She also does great facials. I'm not getting paid to say this, but she's absolutely incredible. And she is the reason that my skin is clear. Like, because obviously I have to take some credit for it because I've made a lot of shifts in my life, but she is amazing. She has great advice, and yeah, she's super knowledgeable. Okay, you're being a bossy boy, and I don't appreciate it.
I'm going to point out one thing, though, because you're talking about doctors and them pushing medications and all kinds of stuff. And we've been watching that ever since these vaccines or whatever they are have come out. And the one thing I'm going to point out is just how much of a concern our health is to them. Yeah. When one of the companies involved has had the biggest criminal fine of $2.8 billion for damaging people through pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
And if it wasn't for what's going on now, they would never have survived. And they were holding on through their bankruptcy in order to get to the point where they no longer had to have the concern of that.
Yeah.
So these are the same people that are trying to save our planet right now.
But
So,
isn't it
just so you
so
know.
sad? Isn't it so sad that, you know, like we have these doctors who become doctors with good intentions, you would assume, right? Like a nurse or a doctor or a police officer, you would assume that at some point they had really good intentions. They wanted to make a change. They wanted to help people, you know. This is an act of service. This is a job, you know, this is a service job. And you would think that their intentions at some point are good. And you would think that at some point they would start questioning things. Like, for example, when I was studying, one of my professors, she had worked for like a carpet cleaning company, like selling in sales for these carpet chemicals. And she, you know, they teach us how to instill the fear of God into people. First of all, that's like a big part of marketing, right? So their target audience, come here. Sorry. So their target audience was pregnant women, first time mothers, pregnant women. And the reason that the target audience was first time pregnant women was because they were easier to manipulate. You know, you could call them up and say, we have this carpet cleaner, which is made out of chemicals, that if you don't clean your carpets with, is going to kill your baby. Like your baby's going to be crawling on the carpet and your baby's going to get sick and can die because, okay, granted, carpets are really dirty, but is this really, you know? And yeah, and she said that that's where she made all of her sales, or most of her sales was from fear, like instilling fear in these pregnant women. And so that made me think, and that paired with, you know, like, so my knowledge in marketing and my knowledge in like, okay, like literally I was taught how to instill fear in people in order to sell them something. Like that fear is a tactic in marketing. So that paired with my experience with my doctor was enough for me to realize like, okay, is this legit? Like this seems kind of bullshit to me. Like it seems like they're just pushing the fear mongering onto people for a product that nobody knows anything about. Like,
yeah. It's funny though that you say that because this is how they've been selling everything, is by scaring the shit out of everybody.
Yeah.
So as March 17th, 2020, I was sitting in my studio and I was talking to one of my employees because we were debating whether we were going to be locked down or not, like closed before they told us to close. So they kept pestering me like, what are we going to do? What are we going to do? And I said, just hang on a second. I said, I'm thinking, right? Mm-hmm. And so my response was, either this is a real pandemic and we're about to hug a lot of our loved ones goodbye, mm-hmm. or this is the biggest vaccine commercial I've ever seen in my life. Yeah, I said that before they were even talking about vaccinations, right? So that was March 17th, 2020. And then I witnessed the whole thing. If anybody knows anything about launch marketing, they've done it all the way through. You know, it's like as they're lifting a lockdown, they're saying, you know, with all the mandates that they're supposedly dropping, they're like, you know, you can get rid of the mask, but don't get used to it. By the fall, they're going to come back. And that's even before the day they allowed you to take your mask off, if you listen to them, because they're not my mom or my dad. So I'm not listening to them. They're not my grandma or my grandpa. Because those are the only people I'm going to kind of listen to, but they always had trouble with me anyway. So it's...
Right? They hired influencers. Yeah. They literally hired influencers. Yeah.
So it's just with all the money that they put in, all the effort, all the time and everything, they still couldn't get it. All of us.
Yeah, right.
Great. I'm like,
but it's funny. It's so funny how that they just wound up doing this whole thing. So I'm gonna ask you a question. There is one question here in the chats here, and somebody wanted to know if you had any entanglement. It was Paul. He wanted to know if you had any entanglements with bylaw or health agents or any fines through your happy-go-lucky journey through this solemn course of nonsense.
So when I was in Ottawa, no. But I did live in Texas last summer, and the only reason I actually came back, it's funny, we were briefly chatting about the election, but the election was actually the only reason I came back to Canada, because I don't believe in mail-in ballots. So I came back to Canada, but I didn't fly back into Canada. I flew into Buffalo because at the time they were still doing the quarantine facilities, and I didn't want to be subjected to that. So I said, you know what, I'll fly into Buffalo and then I'll walk across the border. Well, what a nightmare that was, because one of my suitcase wheels broke. I was on my period. I had a 4 a.m. flight, so I had to be at the airport for 2 a.m. And it was just like an exhausting day. I couldn't sleep. And then I had to, anyways, so I finally get to the border. They were like, do you have the ArriveCAN app? I said, no. They were like, can you download it? I said, no. They were like, do you have your PCR test? I said, no. They said, well, you have two options. You either go back across the border and you pay about $300 to get a PCR test, or we give you a fine. And at first, you know, I go out and I'm talking to my mom about it, and I'm about to have a fucking meltdown. Like, I ended up having a complete meltdown, because I'm just like, I'm hungry, I haven't eaten, I'm tired, like completely exhausted, I'm on my period, I just want to go home, I just want to vote, and I just want to get the fuck back out of here. Like, that's all I want, more than anything. And I said, I'm just going to be going home to do my 14-day quarantine anyways. Why is this test so important? Like, I'm going straight home. My mom is fully vaccinated. Why do I need to do this test? Like, you can't deny me entry to this country. And so they ended up sending me into this separate building, which was now run by public health. And it was these two guys who told me they got the job last week. They were younger than me. There's no way that they, you know, have done like the appropriate training to actually be like, to one, be administering these tickets, but, you know, two, it was just this whole thing. So they gave me an ultimatum, and I just said to them, you know, like, I'm having a hard time with work. Like, can you show some empathy, have some compassion for me? I'm having a hard time with work. I was just living in another country, and, you know, I'm coming back to vote, and, you know, I'm just like, I'm exhausted. Just let me go home. That's all I want more than anything. I'm going to quarantine. And they lacked any kind of empathy whatsoever. And they gave me this ticket for $6,255 for not having a PCR test. And then I was harassed for about 13 days once I got back into Canada, with numerous calls a day from public health. And I was receiving emails on a daily basis from public health and, you know, harassing me. And I'm just like, they sent me home with PCR kits. And I was like, I'm not putting this shit in my nose. So it basically just sat at the front door, and they called me. They're like, did you complete them? And I was like, yeah, I completed them. Like, maybe they're lost in the mail. Like, I don't know, you know? And yeah, so I did receive that fine. It's actually being fought right now by Fight the Fines. And so that was that. And then that's the only fine that I've received. I was hosting like yoga in the park, and I was approached by a bylaw officer then, and they kind of, I don't know if they were just having a good day or they thought I was cute in my yoga outfit or like what it was, I don't know, but they kind of gave it a pass, and they were like, okay, have a good day. I was harassed outside of City Hall. I mean, we all were, but I guess I just got lucky, and my name wasn't on the list to get a ticket, or maybe my name was on the list to get a ticket when I just wasn't there, because there were a couple weeks that I wasn't able to join. I don't really know. He is really wanting attention right now. I don't know if you can hear him crying.
Yeah.
Well, we're getting to the end of this anyway, so we'll be able to wrap it up soon. So that's no problem. So he'll get all your weapons.
Yeah, so I hope that answers your question. I was threatened with a couple tickets. I did get that one ticket coming back across the border. And outside of that, I didn't get any other tickets. But I will say, like, I felt when I was in Ottawa that I was like a target. Like, just the way that people were looking at me, specifically officers. Like, I know that some of the officers were really nice, but I mean, as nice as they could be when they're being scolded for, you know, interacting with us even. So, yeah, it was very interesting. Come here.
Interesting.
As we're wrapping up, do you want to just let everyone know how they can find you? Just go over your socials and anything else you want to share with us, anything upcoming you got going on.
Yeah. So my Instagram is, you're welcome, Paul. My Instagram is VatraWellness. So it's spelled V as in Victor, A-T-R-A. Yeah, you got it there. Wellness. And then my website is VatraWellness@gmail.com. And yeah, is it automatically doing that? That's so cool.
It's a producer in the background. Just on top of things.
Yeah.
We have our ways.
I'm like, that is so cool. All like there's a little magic trick.
Yeah.
So, but all of my handles are the same. My email is my Instagram handle at gmail.com. So it's really easy. Like if you can spell VATRA wellness, then you can find me because everything is the same. I do have a couple retreats coming up, so they're a little bit different from each other. One is like kind of going off the grid and camping and just like rewilding, I guess you could say. So there's going to be yoga, there's going to be arts and crafts. It's kind of like a summer camp, but for adults. Yeah, and then there is the last week of July. Sorry, he's distracting me. The last week of July. We are doing like staying in yurts. One of my girlfriends and I, she has an amazing yoga studio. So we're going to be staying in yurts, and it's going to be more of a different vibe, like more kind of rest and rejuvenation of like, just settling down and coming back into yourself. A sense of calm. Like she specializes in sound healing. And she's done a lot of immense trainings in that. Like she's incredible. Just like the different frequencies and vibrations and everything. So she's going to be doing a lot of that. Get your toy. Get it.
Are all of these events on your website if our viewers need to find them?
So I'm actually, the event that's coming up next month, it's actually been a pretty like spontaneous thing. I actually met this girl who is also in a very similar place, and we're still working out the details. So we're ironing it all out. So we haven't posted about it per se, or I haven't, at least. She's been kind of posting about it, but I want things to be a little bit more ironed out. We're doing that on Wednesday. And then I'll be posting about it. The best way to find out about the events is to go to my website and subscribe to email updates. So putting in your email, because I'm going to be putting out bi-weekly or monthly emails depending on what's going on in that month or within those couple of weeks. Because there is a lot coming up, like with the clothing swaps, nature cleanups, outdoor yoga classes now that it's getting nicer out, the retreats. There's just a lot. And I'm also planning to host potlucks as well. Because we do have a lot of really cool like park areas, right? So I don't know if it's going to be like at the same time as a clothing swap. That could be cool because it can be exhausting trying on clothes, or how that's going to look. But it is something that I'm going to be putting in my emails. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah, and I'll obviously also be posting about it all over my social media as well. So
awesome. Well, it was great having you on. That was a great conversation. I really liked hearing kind of your background on everything and just kind of how you got into everything. And yeah, that was great. Thank you. I really appreciate that. We really appreciate that.
That we were able to make this happen.
Yes, absolutely.
Very good.
Yes.
Very good.
Thanks, guys.
I would also like to say, anybody out there, subscribe to our channel, like this, share it with your family, friends that you know will like it. Share it with your friends and family. Just share it everywhere. You never know. You never know who's going to like what. And also, people are waking up at their own pace. So sometimes it just takes that one video, that one comment. I know a lot of people started to wake up when they started to see the convoy and Trudeau starting to act like Stalin and Hitler with a lot of the movements that he did. So we got to keep sharing, keep being patient with those as they're slowly kind of waking up. Again, we're a part of We Are All Essential. I'm getting tongue-tied here. So We Are All Essential. You can come join us at WeAreAllEssential.ca. You can register your business. If you want to go public, you can definitely go public. If you want to stay quiet for a little while, you can do that. Go in the back scenes. There's a lot of knowledge to be learned. So there's a couple of training things that are within our organization. So go ahead and join. If you don't have a business and you're like, hey, I don't have a business, but I want to join anyway. We're looking for volunteers. This is a very important part of We Are All Essential is our help. We definitely need the help. So the more shoulders, the merrier. So again, we look forward to seeing you next week. And don't forget to subscribe and share the shit out of this video.
Yes.
Yes.
See y'all later.
Thanks again.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Kristina.
Bye.
Bye.